I will be taking a little bit of a step back from social media, just to prioritize my family, prioritize my relationship with Ken, and just save a little bit of those special moments for family and just keep it a little bit more personal. My personal choice that I'm prioritizing my own mental health, my family. I don't think there's anything wrong with having occasional check-ins with yourself that, hey, if you need to pull back a little bit, that's okay. If you want to take a step forward a little bit, that's okay. But knowing when to do so is probably the healthiest option.
Hey friends, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It is Monday, June 3rd, 2024, and I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. Well, Gypsy Rose Blanchard's brand new series, or her second season, Life After Lockup, Gypsy Rose Blanchard on Lifetime. The second season starts tonight. And ahead of that, a lawsuit has been filed against a former quote unquote producer and content creator that has been apparently leaking Gypsy's private and confidential medical records online through paid platforms behind paywalls and in videos, fueling narratives and conspiracies about Gypsy's case, which a lawsuit in Missouri states was part of a smear campaign started by the quote-unquote producer once the family cut ties with her in 2019. If you're not new to my channel, you will know the long history that we have had with April Johns, AKA Fancy Macelli, and her misinformation campaign that she has been posting online. When Gypsy was released, most people believed she was a victim of what her mom had done to her. And then a wave of content creators found a woman named Fancy Macelli who goes by the Good Wives Network. Her real name is April Johns. And they began to divulge and consume April's content, believing that April had information about a case that nobody else had, that she had evidence that nobody else had. And that evidence was that the state was wrong, the prosecutors were wrong, the doctors were wrong, the experts were wrong, and that Gypsy actually wasn't a victim of her mom, but rather she was in on it the whole time, even though her mother started harming Gypsy when she was an infant. Well, a lawsuit now is suing April, not because she's a content creator. No, it's because April had entered into a business contract with the family, and the family says that she not only committed fraud, but she has also committed unjust enrichment, breach of contract, and false light. The lawsuit was actually filed in Missouri, and I obtained a copy of it yesterday, and I can give you some information here. It was filed in Livingston County in the state of Missouri, and it includes not only Gypsy, but her stepmother, Christy, her dad, Rod, and her sister, Mia. In the lawsuit, they are suing April Johns, who goes by Francesca Macelli or Fancy Macelli. And according to this, they state that during Gypsy's childhood, her mother began reporting that Gypsy suffered from a myriad of medical conditions. They included, but were not limited to, muscular dystrophy, leukemia, and paraplegia, requiring Gypsy to be in a wheelchair. Gypsy received services and assistance based on the representations of Dee Dee. They talk about how they went through Hurricane Katrina, ended up in Missouri, and that Gypsy was put through a lot of different procedures by her mother over the span of her childhood. It says, while living here, Dee Dee sought medical care from several dozen medical providers in Springfield and Kansas City, Missouri. During these visits, Gypsy's lists of medical ailments ailments increased. Gypsy's mother, Dee Dee, regularly sought the assistance of charities under the auspices of helping caring for her ailing daughter. These charities provided untold thousands of dollars of assistance in the form of everything from free motorized wheelchairs, travel, vacations, meetings with celebrities, and brand new houses provided by Habitat for Humanity. The period that this happened, the abuse was ongoing. She ended up stabbed to death by Nicholas Godejohn, and Gypsy was arrested in June of 2015. And after her arrest, it was discovered for the first time that she could walk, that she did not need to have treatment for most of her ailments, and that her mother was treating her for illnesses she did not have. During the investigation, it was uncovered that Dee Dee had been subjecting Gypsy to nearly a lifetime of medical abuse that used her as a prop to commit fraud upon everyone. Experts agree that Gypsy has been and was the victim of a condition called Munchausen by proxy. These unnecessary procedures included, but were not limited to, the removal of her salivary glands, the placement of a feeding port in her stomach, and painful diagnostic procedures. She was also forced for years to take medications for seizures and narcotics for illnesses and disorders she didn't have. All of these were forced upon Gypsy by her mother. Due to the extent of the abuse that Gypsy suffered and the circumstances surrounding the murder, Gypsy was offered and pled guilty to a reduced charge and sentenced to 10 years at Missouri Department of Corrections. She was assigned to Chillicothe Correctional Center in 2016. So she says that after getting into prison, she makes contact with Macelli, who basically claims that she has a production company called Mad Ginger Entertainment, and she purported to have experience in the entertainment industry and that she had resources and expertise to bring media projects to fruition that would be financially beneficial to the plaintiffs. During this time, Gypsy had a pretty limited education. She hadn't completed her GED. But during this period, she presented them with a life's right option agreement. She would obtain for a 1-year option, renewable for an additional year for the life rights of Gypsy's story, and set out parameters of payments of net profits when the production would be completed. At the time, Gypsy was in prison. She hadn't even completed her GED. She had never had formal education. She didn't really understand contracts, but she ended up signing this contract. Her stepmother signed it, and her father and her sister. They agreed on this agreement that they would provide criminal case discovery, including crime scene photos, police videos, court transcripts, family photos, and Gypsy's private protected medical records. For the next 2 years, they said that Gypsy and Rod and Christy diligently worked with the defendant they had countless conversations and interviews with her regarding their lives and circumstances of the murder. And during this time, she purported to be skilled and experienced enough to perform her side of the contract. In May of 2019, she spoke to us in Touch about how great of a person she was and how open and honest Gypsy had become. And then later in 2019, they ended up souring with her because she had failed to secure any media projects or produce any marketable content. And Johns Macelli was becoming confrontational over Gypsy's relationship with her fiance, Ken, and they severed ties with her. And then what followed, they said, was that Macelli started to create content, and she would do this in form of posts, comments, videos, podcasts, interviews, and that she created a web page and a Facebook group and page called Good Wives Guide to True Crime. And then she would post related topics around Gypsy and other cases. But following the termination of their agreement, she wrote a blog post criticizing Gypsy for her recent choices. And this comment was in reference to Gypsy having a relationship with a man named Ken while she was incarcerated. She also made comments about Rod and Christy were horrible parents for allowing this. She posted a blog in Patreon, a subscription-based website, Dee Dee and Gypsy Career Cons with a Script. And the topic is about Gypsy helping her mother con the people of Slidell, Louisiana. Gypsy would have been a preteen during this time. Fancy's MO really changed, and I'm just going to go off of the lawsuit here into my own personal experience with her, is that she used to be very pro-Gypsy. She claims that she changed after she learned that they were liars. The truth is, She only changed her tune when her behavior became so difficult for the family to manage. She wasn't delivering content. She claimed that she was a producer and she wasn't. She claimed that she had credentials and she didn't. She misrepresented her experience to them. And so when they cut ties, it was then and only then that she went on this campaign. And it was then and only then she changed that she somehow believed Gypsy was a mastermind of her own abuse and that she had participated in the abuse and that she wanted to be abused and that she and her mom were basically in on it together. She was accusing a child who was actually being abused of being a part of the con. And this has gone on for years. And it ramped up, according to the lawsuit, in 2023 when she found out that Gypsy was getting out of prison. And she has continued to push conspiracy after conspiracy after conspiracy about Gypsy. And it's always in the negative. It's always of the subset that there's an ulterior negative motive with Gypsy. Up until the moment they cut ties, April had always believed Gypsy. She had always said that Nicholas John was, the one that did this, that Gypsy didn't manipulate him, that she was a victim, that she was a victim of her mom, that that the state got it right. Like, she never questioned the legitimacy of the case. It was only an after that the family fired her because the family figured out that she was defrauding them. And then she turned it and flipped it on them, maybe in an effort to try to save face and be like, oh no, I wasn't fired because I was a fraud. I fired them because they were a fraud. Almost like flipping the narrative. But she has made posts about Mia. She claims that Gypsy is dangerous and that Mia is going to, be harmed by her sister. She says that she's going to bury Gypsy. She makes threats on Gypsy. She says she makes posts about how Gypsy wants to meet Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. After November 6, 2023 on Facebook, nearly every post created on content on every platform by her is associated to Gypsy or the Blanchard family. And some days there were multiple posts a day. She was posting this stuff on monetized platforms like Patreon, and she was a part of the biggest part of this that seems to be the issue here is that the medical records that were provided to her as a part of this case about the story, which have been used by other production companies, by the way, and they are not public. They were never part of her trial. She never went to trial, and medical records aren't a part of criminal trials often. And even if they are, they would be sealed and not available to the public. So Gypsy's file, you cannot request her medical records from the state because they don't have them. So the medical records are provided to her to help her tell the story, not for her to use it as a weapon to try to discredit Gypsy. And they are not for public consumption. So as a part of her conduct, it says she posted in both public and subscription-based platforms documents, photos, and videos that she received from the plaintiffs as a part of a contractual relationship. These included that she posted online for public viewing Gypsy's private, protected medical records. She has had Colleen McShane, a professor of nursing at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and a co-owner of the Good Wives Network, read and opine as to what is in Gypsy's private, protected medical records. In posts in early 2024, Johns Macelli stated that she was uploading her medical records, Gypsy's medical records, in her possession to her Patreon, the website that allows people to subscribe monthly for a fee. She also posted police reports, police videos, and police photographs, including crime scene photos of Dee Dee's body. She has posted personal, private cell phone numbers on her paid platform of Gypsy and the family. On December 28th, she said this: "I'm so sick of Gypsy. Like, I honestly want to bury her so far down a rabbit hole. I think if I dig deep enough, I could make her look so effing bad." She also is frequently seen screaming and cursing. She accuses Christy Blanchard of selling effing Munchausen by proxy, and Mark Feldman, the expert on the case in Munchausen by proxy, never looked it up, and I have it in an email. I'm calling it. It ain't effing medical child abuse. We've been had. Eff it, bitch. Sue me. Her case is undisputed. Like, the state had the medical records in terms of like what they were looking at to help them understand the complexity of the abuse. But the medical records were not a part of a case because she never went to trial, and you cannot request her medical records from the state. It is indisputed that she is a victim. But these are the conspiracies that Fancy has put out. And because she was a quote unquote producer, people found her content and believed she was credible. And they believed that she had insider information, and she was using this insider as like, I have inside information that nobody else has. I know secrets about the family that nobody else does. And it was that started this wildfire of conspiracies where content creators were sourcing Fancy as a credible source, even though what she was sharing was private protected medical records that she obtained through a contractual agreement that were not supposed to be released to the public, and that she was to return to the family when their contract was ended. They go on to say that in February, they sent a letter to her asking her to take down offending content, and she never actually responded to the cease and desist. She's posted videos on YouTube which say, I'm absolutely the leading expert on Gypsy Rose Blanchard cases. She's a dangerous freaking person and shouldn't be anyone's home ever. She's a deviant. Talking about Go to John would be able to burn her Gypsy's ass down. I'm going to bury her just a little bit for him tonight. F you, be Gypsy, I'm going to bring you down tonight. They have apparently people that are willing to be witnesses that have worked with Fancy that had stopped working with her because they had warned her that she was conducting what she was doing was unprofessional and defamatory. And she was asked multiple times to stop, and she hasn't. And so what she's getting sued for is fraud, breach of contract, unjust enrichment, defamation, and false light. It says after failing to fulfill her objectives of the agreement and being dismissed by the plaintiff, she used the materials, especially Gypsy's private protected medical records, to produce public content, making false and defamatory statements about each of the plaintiffs, accusing the plaintiffs of criminal behavior for which she has no reasonable basis, in fact, to assert for defendant's own personal and for her financial gain. She's like accusing a child of being in on crimes with her mom. It doesn't even make sense. She's admitted to contacting her parole officer to make changes to her parole conditions. She actually tried to stop her parole and wrote a letter to the parole board not to release her. She used it says defendant herself and through her agents used her previous contractual relationship with plaintiffs to pose as the foremost expert in the case, and that the fact that she had inside access to create the illusion that she possesses information that no one else possessed, which is untrue. Through November of 2019, and even since October of 2023, she and her agents have used platforms to harass, abuse, defame, but not limited to posting her cell phone numbers and her private protected information in her medical records. They are seeking a temporary restraining order against her where she would be barred from speaking about her, harassing her, posting these medical records, posting protected documents, and basically like preventing her from doing this as a part of the case. They also are seeking that she immediately remove what she's already put up online, and they're seeking a permanent injunction where she would not be able to post about the family at all, and removing all these records. And they're accusing her of fraud because they said that she had made multiple representations regarding its business knowledge and expertise that were false at the time they were made. And that was why they decided to work with her, but they didn't know that it was false. But they're saying that Fancy knew when she told them she had expertise that she didn't. And that at the time of the signing of the agreement and engaging in business with her, they were ignorant of the falsity of her representations, and they relied on her truthfulness of the representations, and they were relying that she wasn't lying to them, that she had credentials and worked as a producer. And had they known this, they never would have worked with her. They say they've lost income, lost career opportunities, mental health, emotional anguish. The acts are made with actual malice, recklessness, and indifference to the plaintiff's federally protected rights, and outrageous because of its evil motive, reckless indifference plaintiff's rights. They're also suing her for breach of contract, and they are suing her for unjust enrichment and false light and defamation, all they say which has been done with malice. Now, Fancy has not responded to requests for comments from any media outlets, but she did do a 3 or 4 hour live last night where she screamed and yelled and continued to accuse Gypsy of crimes. She accused the parole officer of being in Gypsy's pocket. She accused the probation and parole office of being bribed. She encouraged people to mass report her to her parole officer. She tried to get people to file a class action lawsuit against Gypsy for harassing them when she hasn't harassed them. She accused Gypsy of taking down her videos and her content, despite the fact that she has no evidence of that happening. She also seemingly admitted a lot of it because she kept threatening to bury Gypsy and making really just inflammatory statements. The crux of this isn't because she's a content creator. And so if you're a content creator that had no previous relationship with Gypsy and you were using her as a source, Gypsy's not suing the content creators that were using her as a source. She is suing Fancy because Fancy got a hold of these records because Fancy, according to this lawsuit, fraudulently said she was a producer and was going to make a film about her, and she never did. And then once they terminated her, it was only then she used that and weaponized it on a hateful smear campaign to make it look like she wasn't the fraud, but the family was the fraud. It actually kind of sounds like a classic narcissistic injury and a classic narcissistic smear campaign. So I would be very cautious sourcing Fancy for anything. And if you're a content creator using her as a source, we tried to warn you before this got to this point. I have no part of this lawsuit, by the way. I didn't even know it was filed until yesterday. I knew that they were having problems with Fancy, but I did not realize that the lawsuit had been filed. And I had been warning people for months, like, don't source her. She's lying. She's flat out lying. And don't get excited by Fancy saying that Gypsy's going to go after all these other content creators. Like, no, just stop using her as a source and stop spreading these false narratives that she is not a victim of medical abuse, because she is. Anyways, that's all I have for now. What are your thoughts about the lawsuit? Tell me in the comments below. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and thanks for watching. Bye, guys.